There is no music.
Why?
We can sing.
Hello, everybody. I have no idea what happened with the countdown. I just moved the StreamYard account from previous Cube First account to the new one, which is my employer and also the sponsor of the show. So we're using our StreamYard account. So I missed the best part of the beginning of the show, which is like the music that goes with the countdown. Anyway, super happy to be here. To be honest, I never thought we would do that show. That episode was like, as you know, if you are someone who joined us before, I do the DevRel show every other Thursday, usually around 3 p.m. Eastern time. It depends on the guest. Sometimes I have to do it sooner or later, depending on the time zone. But like I try to keep it that way. But last Thursday, last Thursday, actually Thursday, and like a week and a half ago, I think we were supposed to do the show, and I was so sick that I was like, okay, it's not gonna happen. I have to postpone that. So I contacted my guest and I said, you know what? So sorry about that. It's not within my habits to do that, but we need to move the show to next week. And we settled on Monday. You know, that was a good timing. I had the show on Monday. On the Thursday, I have like the Cube First show, and that give me enough time between the next DevRel show episode. But arrive Monday, actually even Sunday, I think. Like I emailed my guest again, and I was like, you know what? Not gonna happen. And I've been sick for like a week and a half, and I was sure that like having like the weekends off like would be good for me. It was good for me. I hope it helped, but like arrive on Monday, still not good for me. I was not able to do the show, so finally we postponed again to today, and 2 hours before the show, it was not this time. It was not my fault. We had to
Yeah,
postpone a
no, it
couple of
was all
minutes.
me. Yep.
So I need to. I'm not pointing fingers here. I'm plenty to blame. We postponed the show so often. So if you are joining us live, thanks for being with us. It's great. It's great to have you on the show, and it is episode 13, if I'm not wrong. And I'm really excited. First, because yes, I have like a stupid, still a bit sick voice, but it's not about that. It's because I have someone on the show, the guest, and I practiced while you were away. Is Baruch, and
Almost,
I know you
almost.
said like, yeah. I think
Yeah,
I said
it's
it better before the show.
no, it was close. It's instead of sh in the end, so it's Baruch.
Baruch. Yeah,
Yeah, no,
I think
see,
it's
you're
a
good.
little.
You're good. You're good.
I think
Yeah.
it's a verse. I have this guy.
You know what? My Starbucks name is Bruce. I can go by Bruce.
Oh God, yeah. On Starbucks, my struggle to say your name, but like if it's not even personal, like the struggle to do every name. Like I firmly believe that like this is a marketing campaign, so people post pictures like on Instagram and stuff when they mess their name. But anyway,
And talk about it.
I know I probably sorry.
Yeah, and talk about it like we do. We did the free
Exactly,
promotion of
and
Starbucks right there.
it's perfectly working. So yeah, super excited to have Baruch. God, Baruch. You said you were not going to be upset if I screw up
No,
with your name.
no, I'm
I'm the
not.
same. I'm not upset. So super excited to have you here because we've been following each other on Twitter for I don't know now. It's been at least 2 3 years, if probably more. But we never met in person. Actually, we still don't meet in person yet. But at least we have like a face to face now. So thanks. Super excited to have you on the show. How is life?
Yeah, it's been a while, Fred, since we kind of started to do uh like our little bargaining on giving each other shit on Twitter. It
Oh
was
yeah.
Twitter back then, and now look at us sitting in at least one virtual room, and I hope soon enough in one physical. The Canadian conference that he went in February, what was it?
Kung Fu.
Yeah, Kung Fu was on my list to conferences to go since like forever. I think like 15 years. For some reason, I still cannot crack their tricky CFP process. Never been accepted, but
Oh no.
one day. That's okay. That's okay. That's
That
life.
would be amazing. The thing though is that like they get a lot of submission. Like I was like many years ago was on the board for maybe 1 year or 2 year, like helping to select the talks. And my God, that's really not easy when you get that many submissions. Like they have, I think, like 8 tracks at the same time for 3 days. So they have like spaces for speakers, but still, like they got so many submission that it's real hard. So, but Confu is a great conference, and I'm not saying that because it's in Montreal, but it's been running for years. Before that, it was like a PHP only conference. It was like a PHP conference from PHP Quebec, which is like a local user group, and they transformed Kung Fu conference in like a whole technology conference. So now it's about like mostly every technology that developers need to be successful. And it is a great conference. Like they're doing very well on the attendee side, but they're also doing very well on the speaker side. Like they give those cards where people can like give feedback and notes after the talks, but literally within 1 hour after your talk you receive like those notes from people in the room and people fill them out. So yeah, anyway, I'm babbling about Kung Fu. Hopefully you're gonna be able to be there at some point. I didn't spoke there for a couple of years for different reasons, never happened within my schedule, so I was just happy to be back this year. With that said, depending where you live, it's not the best time usually to come to Montreal in Canada because it's usually like really cold. And like I know a lot of international speakers that came to Kung Fu. They were like, "Yeah, we love the conference, but yeah, I don't think we're gonna come back next year because like it's usually really cold." But this year was kind of like lukewarm temperature, weather.
Yeah, so I have to say that I did a couple of years ago. I did a roadshow in Canada for cloud native meetups. I did Quebec City, Montreal, Kitchener, and Toronto. Um, no, Ottawa, Ottawa somewhere or somewhere there. I don't remember. I mean, like a roadshow of East Canada. It was in the middle of the winter. It was freaking cold, but you go there. It's a part of the attraction. You
It
go
is.
to a cold place in the winter. You get crunchy snow under your shoes. That's the opportunity to do that. Especially for me, I was living in a warm climate since I was 12 with like I had to take like to go somewhere to see and feel snow. So definitely not a problem, not a problem. So yeah, no, absolutely, Kung Fu is on my list. Hopefully there is now another benefit of coming there and to see you in person. So yeah, hopefully next winter.
That would be nice. That would be nice. Let me know if that happened. So, for the folks that don't have the pleasure or maybe unpleasure of like having discussion with this guy on Twitter, he was basically saying like we're picking on each other, and that's true. And I just love it. I just love it. Every time I see a reply from you, I know that I either said something shitty and like you're just like putting me in my place, but like nicely in a friendly way, or I said something and I like just open it for you to say something. But for people that don't have that pleasure, who are you? Tell
Yeah,
us a little
so
bit more about you.
my name is Baruch Sadogursky. I'm doing developer relations for the last 12 years now. Started in 2011 in a company called JFrog. You're probably familiar with the company and with their products, Artifactory and X-Ray. And if you are familiar, I'm partially responsible because we started when it was like a company of less than 10 people. And we had a very successful IPO in 2020. So after that, I kind of started to think, what would I want to do when I grow up? It was COVID. It was hard for everybody, burnout and what's not. So I took a little sabbatical, and then I started to advise startups on DevRel, kind of a way to give back to the community, just being like make sure that there are a lot of very, very good startups, very good ideas, very good products and tools that can make life of developers easier, make developers more productive. And a lot of them just don't know how to approach
Mhm.
developers, how to speak with developers. They're trying all kind of weird stuff like traditional marketing and what's not, that obviously doesn't work. So it was like some kind of an opportunity for me to make our industry of developer tools a little bit better. And in the same kind of vein of making life of developers easier, I joined Gradle as developer productivity advocate, trying to advocate for um, better developer productivity for developers out there, and obviously bringing back the feedback of what a productivity means for developers back in. Also try to kind of bring my experience and see how I can help everybody around. Basically, that's the gist.
That is a good that is good experience though. I mean, I don't know a lot of people who's doing DevRel for more than usually 5 years. Usually 5 years, like 3 to 5 years is the threshold. It is an exciting role. It is a tiring role because we do like it's like 20 plus role within like one person. There are so many things to do. Again, exciting role, but usually people after 3 to 5 years they kind of like step down and go to a more, how should I say that, traditional role maybe, or a role that does not demand to be on like 24/7s, and usually it comes with traveling and all those things. So I guess super long beginning of question, like how do you feel doing that after like it's been 12 years you're doing that, like how do you feel still doing that after that long time?
Yeah, so there is obviously tons of burnout in our industry in DevRel because how demanding that is, right? It's a lot. It's a lot. It's something different every time. It's crazy. It's like there is no um, scheduled structured schedule, not for a day, not for a week, not for a month, not for weekends, not for days and nights. It's just like it's been everything. So I always enjoyed it up until very recently, up until COVID, basically, without any problem and any sign of burnout or like just nothing of that. And it was very interesting for me to kind of understand why um, I'm doing it where others really struggle. And
Mhm.
obviously, after it hit me, I try to understand what happened. There is a great book called Burnout by, I don't remember their names, but two sisters that we'll put in the show notes. Their names. It's the book is not necessarily about burnout as as a concept, as more of, I would say, like a feminist view on burnout, on how patriarchal society affects women and brings the burnout much harder on them. And while this is very, very obviously relevant for everybody from that side or another, I am, and although I'm not directly the target, not the audience, but the target object of
Yeah.
subject of this book, I found a very, very interesting revelation there about something that they call closing the stress cycle. And generally, the gist of it is that if you do something really, really stressful, being it a hunting lions in the prehistoric savannah or delivering a talk in a conference, your psyche demands some kind of a celebration of a successful achievement. Either you eat the lion that you hunt down in your community setting with your family and like you're in prehistoric times, or you have the after party of the conference when everybody are happy and you crashing down from your adrenaline high and enjoying the company and everybody else. Now, obviously this happens in real-time events, right? In online, in offline events there is always something, and we know that every day, after each and every day in the conference, there is something. There is speaker dinner, there is conference party, there is like some kind of a cocktails of one of the organizers and the sponsors.
And
you
it's our job
always
to be there.
you always have this closure. But for offline, or you know what, even during your talk, you have the live feedback. If people are smiling and laughing
Mhm.
at your jokes, people are nodding when you say something smart, people are, in the end of the talk, people are applauding, someone thanks you for a great talk that you delivered. This is exactly what kind of, now in hindsight, I understand that this is exactly what kept me going. Now, when you take all that away and you have your online conference in which you speak to yourself, there is no feedback. There is maybe a question in comments, probably not. And then, like, your talk is over and there is no, like, there is nothing. It's just like you had another Zoom meeting, but the stress of
Yeah.
giving the talk is not going away. This is, for me, was the source of the burnout.
Mm.
Right. And without, so, COVID kind of still with us, but it's not what it used to be, let's put it that way. Lockdowns are behind us, all offline events are back. You can close the cycle, you can go, you went to Kung Fu, you had great
Yeah.
time, you feel great about it. And for me, that solves it. So kind of, it shows that the diagnosis is in the right place, and
Mm.
that's exactly what caused it. So for me, this is the recipe against burnout in what I'm doing. Right, I guess it says not very great things about me, but because, like, hey, I'm okay as long as people recognize me and celebrate me and applaud me and tell me how great I am. I guess that's something that my therapist would love to dig into. But but it works, and so this is kind of my recipe for not getting the 6 month burnout of a normal DevRel professional.
Oh, I like that. I mean, I didn't like the burnout part, and I'm sorry you had to go through that. Uh, I did not cut you because that was so interesting, but I have like so many things I want to say. First, I think I found the book. Is it Burnout: The Secret of to Unlocking the Stress Cycle?
Yeah.
It's written by two women.
Yep.
Emily Nagoski and Amelia are they feel like their sister, the same family.
Yeah, they are.
Nagoski.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep. Yep.
yeah, okay.
Exactly.
So I'll check
That's the
that
book.
book because that's super interesting. And there's so many things I want to say. I should have probably taken notes while we are talking. But first, it's great that you found what makes sense for you, what prevents you to go in burnout mode. Um, I agree also that there is something for me with like in-person conference. First, I hate doing like online conferences because you're missing that feedback. And it's not just about like, oh, people, oh, it was so nice, Fred, thank you for the talk. It's just like I'm talking to my screen. Like as you said, it's worse than like a Zoom meeting because at least with the Zoom meetings, I have my colleagues' videos and I see their faces when I'm talking. And I know you should not always like focused on like the people's face in your room when you're doing in person because I've got people who look like they were bored like shit during my talk and they came talk to me after and were like, hey, that was the best talk on the conference. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like I thought you were dying during my talk. Or other people that seemed super excited about the talk but like really didn't come to talk to me after and they were not super excited, but still it's interesting to have that feedback when you give the talk. One of the things that I really loved about that job was doing that in-person event. The problem with me is that I went the other way when at some point in my career I was doing so many in-person events that I was always on the road. That was like too much. I was like more than 80% of my time on the road, which was amazing in a way. I traveled the world. That was great. I make new friends everywhere. I saw places, eat foods, drink stuff that are locals that I had the chance and cost me mostly nothing. That was amazing, but at the same time, that basically screwed up my life locally. Like I did not have a life where I was living, but I miss public speaking. Like the previous honor of Cube First, we're doing mostly offline events, and now I'm going back to the online events, and now I'm going back to the offline events. And I saw that with the 2-3 last conference that I did, and I was missing that so much. Like being with people, talking with people, creating in-person connection, helping people, being successful with your talks. It's great. And you know what? I don't think there's something wrong with like having it, like being or wanting people to thank you for what you've done. Like you spend the time to learn about something, you spend the time to create some slides and demos and like prepare yourself and do dry run to like be sure that you're going to help people, you're going to educate people on a specific topic. It's nice to be thanked on the effort that you put out there to help people. So I don't think there is nothing wrong with that. But through that, it kind of like there's the ego thing too. I mean, like mostly every DevRel I know, we usually have a pretty good ego, but that's a different discussion.
Yeah, I
But
guess
thanks a
it
lot
is a
for
different
sharing about
discussion,
that.
but it also like the same discussion, right? Because in the end of the day, this is the type of people that will thrive being developer advocates. And again, here probably it's a good time to talk about the difference between developer advocacy and DevRel, and that DevRel is actually much wider umbrella under which developer advocacy sits, but definitely not only. And there is place for very different kind of people,
Mhm.
including introverts, including people who don't like to or cannot travel, including people who are completely prefer to stay out of the limelight and what's not, and still thrive in helping developers, improving developers' lives and experiences, basically.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Um, if we go more in like maybe a little more concrete discussion, I'm curious a little bit about, you say that you were working with startup. You're like an advisor on the startup, and you're doing a lot of those. Like I was looking at your LinkedIn. Actually, I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile right now. I think you're doing that at least like 10 startups. How is it working? What is the experience of like being an external advisor within the startup about developer relation?
I love it. It's a lot of like being developer advocate, right? You come, you speak with people, you tell them how you think they should do stuff, and then you leave and let them do it, right? It's all the glory without all the gory work. But yeah, it's basically exactly like it sounds. It's we My founders have me on a speed dial. In a way, they have access to my calendar, so whenever they want to discuss something that relates to developer relations, they can always ask me, and we talk about all kind of stuff, right? Starting from what DevRel is, do startup need it, do startup do it without even realizing that, with the founders that are kind of doing it anyway without knowing how it's even called, and then obviously trying to determine whether they need someone else to help this burden, and then obviously helping with hiring, through networking and interviews and onboarding, and then eventually mentoring the person they're hired. Who should they hire? Should it be developer advocate, or maybe should it be a community
Mhm.
manager, and they can rely on internal develop like engineering resources for doing developer relations proper, developer advocacy proper, and then stuff like product discussions. How do you build a product that developers will like? Not only, but also they will promote it for you inside their organizations and outside them. Any kind of discussion that has anything to do events. Should they go? Should they do online?
Mhm.
Should they do offline? Should they do meetups? Should they do conferences? Should they come to KubeCon or do a lock-up meetup? uh, basically everything that I learned throughout my career, either by doing it or by research, is available for those founders. And I'm glad to say that looks like it's useful, and looks like I'm making an impact, and then we together with those founders making an impact, and it's very, very satisfying. Yeah.
No, that is great. That is great. Yeah, I was curious about like I asked a question because for me that there is two ways to not two ways, but like being a developer advocate or developer relation advisor. I thought that it would be a little bit difficult when you're not in the company, where you're not like breathing day to day, and you're not like part of like the discussion and like the water cooler discussion. So yeah,
You are.
I was curious a little bit on that side, but I think you kind of like under you answer my question.
Yeah, but you are 100% on point. And this is one of the things that I say when people ask me, "Hey, can we hire you as developer advocate contractor?" My answer would be no, not me, not anyone else. Don't even try it. And that's because exactly what you said. Developer advocate really should be someone that is invested in what's company in doing, both in terms of time, in terms of motivation, in terms of interest, in terms of everything. You really cannot do developer advocacy part-time. And I think this is one of the reasons that, from what I see, a lot of people tried doing developer advocacy as a service, and no one succeeded just because it cannot work.
Yeah.
And again, here we have a very different answer for other aspects of developer relations, right? So community management, for example, is much easier, can be done without diving deep into the woods of technology that the company has. And this is why for community management, there are multiple successful agencies that can help. But when we come to developer advocacy per se, I completely agree with you. It cannot be done part time, like an hour in a week.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
not going to work.
It's really hard. Prior to joining Cube first, I decided to do developer relation as a service, and I started so many discussions with so many company, and everybody was excited. And it didn't work for different reasons, but um, I think some of those would have worked, but they were really specific problem that I wanted to solve. Like, hey, we have a new product. We want the V1 of the doc. So they were basically hiring me as like working on a specific project, not working as like a number, like a DevRel umbrella. And I think those could work a little bit, like you said, like a community manager. Like they focus on one thing. They don't have to be there full time. They can plan what they're going to do on social media. They can plan like what they're going to do in the community, and they can react when they're back online. I think they can do that with the technical writer. So I think you can probably do that with like specific part of a developer advocate role, but having someone who's going to do like, hey, DevRel 5 hours, like the old DevRel things, like 5 hours per week or even per month. I don't think it would have worked. So I had discussion with people who were going in that direction, but to be honest, it's a good thing that like nothing panned out, because I'm not sure I would have been successful doing that. But
So
yeah,
yeah, so I saw a number of community managers that keep doing that very successfully. I don't think I have one example of developer
mhm.
advocate who tried it and succeeded. I think all of them eventually went back to work full time as developer advocates for this company or another, without exception.
Yeah. I have a question about what you do right now. I'm a person who do not care about titles and care about titles at the same time. I personally do not care about them, but the industry care about them, so I care about them. And you're a principal developer advocate. Um, this is my title too, and I'm curious from your point of view, what is like a principal developer advocate, and what are you doing at Gradle? You've been there for a little more than a year, so just talk to us through your
Right.
journey.
So I think principal is just like a level on the ladder of individual contributors. And this is something that comes, I guess, after senior or lead or before lead. After, I have no idea. It's probably just the principal part is just a reflection of my experience, I guess. And it comes with expectation of a lot of self guidance from one side and significant impact on the other. And when it comes to significant impact, this is where we go into our favorite territory of measuring developer relations. And I think one of the ways to cheat here, and we can talk about why we need this cheating in the first place, is and this is something that I guess you kind of need to have some kind of seniority and enough experience to understand, is actually going for the needed, so much needed recognition to other teams. In some point of time, being a developer advocate, you say, hey, yes, I'm out there, I'm representing the company, I want to speak as much people as possible to show them what we do, and then hear from them of what we can do better, and then you can bring it to the product team, dump all this feedback on their doorstep, and then you're done, which kind of in essence works. But when you are held accountable and people say, okay, what is your impact, saying that might not be enough.
Yeah.
Right. Although it's fair, this is what you expected to do, and it definitely has impact for sure. And it's in our known universe. If you take the entire input of inbound leads to your organization, you can say everything that cannot be accounted for in traditional marketing, which is very easily traceable to like whatever advertisement, SEO, and this kind of stuff, has to come from somewhere. And this has to be contributed to developer relations just because there is nothing else there. Right. So in the end of the day, people, the audience that hear the DevRel show with Fred today and hear about Gradle and went to our website and took a look at Gradle Develocity and discovered that this is the next best thing after sliced bread, and then bring it to their company and now pay millions to Gradle. This is developer relations impact that will never be measured, right? But it is. And this is why I mentioned that, hey, you might want to cheat a little bit and bring recognition from other places, because this recognition that I just described, your listeners, won't be attributed directly to what we did. It won't be, just because it cannot be, because no one knows. But if when we now spoke about Kung Fu, and hopefully Fred is now going to Kung Fu organize and say, you know what, Baruch complained he cannot get to your conference. What's wrong with you? He's an amazing speaker. I want to see him next week. And the organizer said, yeah, Fred, sorry, our mistake. Next year he's in. And then, I'm going to Montreal and I meet a customer that we already have there and blow their mind. And then I go to our CRO and say, hey, David, they're going to use more now because we had a great conversation and they realized that they are missing tons on tons of features. This is something that will bring the needed recognition to the job that we are doing, even though I did something that developer advocate is not supposed to do. Customer meetings is not something that is my job description, never was. But suddenly, our CRO loves me because I help him a lot.
Yeah.
So this kind of understanding comes with experience, because I remember younger me who would spit on the idea of doing a sales meeting, shouting, developer relations is not sales and what's not, right? But it's a part of the growth. It's a part of the difference between developer advocate and senior developer advocate and principal developer advocate. Now I look for those opportunities because I know that our CRO is going to love me for that. And for me, it's not a big deal. It's really, there is no difference. Today I speak at Confu. Tomorrow I speak in like this company headquartered in Montreal. I can come up with a couple, by the way. Or what was it there? Not Spotify. Don't remember.
Now your CRO's not going to be proud of you now.
Right, but I can because I just did it in October when I did the Canadian tour once again. Shopify. Here we go. Shopify. Right. I go to Shopify Montreal, I think.
Yeah.
Here we go. You see? David. I remember. Right. So I go to Shopify and it's the same. It's basically the same content almost, right? Yep. It will be much more heavily product oriented, but it doesn't matter for me. And I have a huge win. So this is like a small example of what principle means in the principal developer advocate.
No, I totally agree, and I was laughing when you were saying like, yeah, the younger me was like yelling like, no, like developer advocate doesn't do sales, and I still agree with that. Like we don't do sales; it's not part of our job. I don't want to be tied with like every amount of money at the end of the month or the week or whatever or the quarter. But like doing those kind of things now, it's like I always try to find like what can I do within my job to help other department, and this is a good example. Give me 1 second. I'm still coughing my life. The rest is better, feeling better, but I'm still coughing a lot. One of the other example that was talking with another guest recently was, when previous company we had a sales department. We don't right now, but previous company we had one, and I was like, you know what? Like, is there questions that your customers often ask that you have to answer? And I'm gonna have stuff in the documentations to help you, and you're going to be able to just point people to the docs. So for me, that's going to give me a better docs with more interesting content. For you, hopefully you're going to get less questions, and you're going to be also to have like one link to rule them all. And those small things that you can just like, it's not totally part of your job, it's a little bit part of your job. You can have them, like as you said, like doesn't matter really, like to go talk to customers or talking to someone that's going to be at a conference. Yeah, no, like it's kind of like the same ish for you, and it really brings value. Like when it brings value within your role, but like it shows also the impact you're having to the rest of the business. So you call this cheating? I call this doing it right. I think I don't think it's cheating. I think it's like it's what is developer relation in a sense.
Yeah, in a sense, but I mean, if you being like purist about it, right?
Yeah,
and
I agree.
say like, hey, developer advocate, it's developers, it's community, it's not sales and all this kind of stuff. So growing beyond that is, I guess what I mean. And I have this. So for my founders, one of the first thing I do is doing a presentation for their entire company about what developer relations is, and I have a slide there in which developer relations is basically in the center of everything. Mm-hmm. Right. So we obviously have marketing and product. This is like the very nature of what we are doing, spreading the word out there and bringing feedback to product, but it also helping to sales in this kind, or you know what, even warmer hands off.
Yep.
I know a guy who knows a guy in the company that we really, really want to get into. What can be nicer for those poor SDRs that everybody hate because they do the cold calls to actually once in a life have a nice introduction without people, sending their emails to spam or hanging out on them. So This is another group that loves me because I make their life a little bit easier. But it's also obviously recruiting, because in the end of the day, what we do is part of employer brand. Mm-hmm. Right. So if we say about how awesome our technology, people will want to work with in our company on that technology, and this is employer brand, plain and simple. We can hire better people without overpaying for that, and this is a win as well, right? So we're helping HR, we even help R&D in some way
Yeah.
by highlighting their work. And if we do it correctly, and if we remember to circle back, and if we remember to give credit when credit due, they're gonna love us because we amplify what they are doing, highlighting their work
Yeah. Yeah.
for the entire world, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's everybody. It's we touch everybody and everything in the companies that we work, and the maturity is about realizing that and then utilizing that for for amplifying how important developer relations is.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, I totally agree with like everything you said. This is how I think too. I think I always call myself the friendly, social, technical, approachable face of the company, and as you said, like you represent the company. So if you're like honest and you don't bullshit people and you talk about what's good and you're honest with folks, it reflects on like every departments and you have like a pretty good impact. So I have the feeling that we could talk about DevRel for a while, but I'm gonna cut us now because I want to move to the demo part, where you're gonna tell us like how to cut debugging time with Gradle, build, scan, and build cache. If I'm not wrong, that's gonna be
Yeah,
awesome.
so yeah, I'm just going to show you basically what we are working at, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so
Just before
Gradle.
just before you move to that, sorry about
Yeah.
that. Two things. I want to thanks Cube First, who sponsored the show. So they let me do the show during my work time. They let me use the StreamYard account, which to have like a beautiful image HD is like a couple of bucks per month. So I totally
And it's not cheap. It's like I
it's
think
not.
it's 40 or something.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's not. I think it's even more expensive than that. But like the quality is there's a great tool though. I would probably pay for it, but not having to pay for it's pretty good. But just like dedicating the time, using time during my job to do that. So thanks, Cube First. If you are in the cloud native community space, please give a try to the open source free tools we're having that helps you to create a production ready Kubernetes cluster with GitOps. So pretty cool tool. It's why I decided to join them a little more than a year ago. And also, we have Black Girl Bites who say, "Hey, y'all." And now I'm just blanking on your real name, but I'm going to keep your YouTube name anyway because that's your YouTube name. So, yeah, by the way, we're going to have her as a guest on the DevRel show. I don't remember when it is scheduled because I have like a couple of weeks already scheduled in advance, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be a great show too. So on that note, let's learn more about Gradle.
Yeah, yeah. So Gradle started many years ago. I think like also so about time like 12 years ago or something as a Java build tool. That was a better build tool that existing that the ones that existed back then, which are Gradle and which is Maven and Ant, and obviously grew a lot since then, right? And not only in the JVM community, but work like space that
Yeah.
now it can build. Yeah, it can build not only Java but also Scala, and you can write your build scripts not only in Groovy DSL but also in Kotlin DSL, and supporting advanced stuff like build caching and a lot of other stuff. But also in 5 years ago, Gradle as a company started to work on a commercial product, which is called Gradle Develocity. And Gradle Develocity is basically, from how I describe it, and it's different than how the corporate marketing describes it, but I described it as a project comprehension and improvement tool, right? So you have your build, And build is usually something that is complicated. And the last XZ story that that broke last week is about how complicated build tools are.
Mhm.
Right, the story. And Fred, again, I trust you to add the right links to the show notes. Basically, it's a story about a very, very sophisticated hack that took years to embed by a developer who kind of built the trust with the community with fair commits, and then at some point of time, by over a span of a year, build a very sophisticated backdoor by implanting parts of this hack in their in the parts that are dedicated to build an assembly tool, right? So it was the auto tools which configures the product, which is exactly that. Builds are complicated nightmare that no one wants to
Yeah.
deal with, and this understanding allowed the attacker to kind of add those bits and pieces with the PRs that went under the radar with looks good to me, just because no one really wanted to dig into that, right? And this is obviously true for any build tool, even the best ones, which is Gradle. I'm obviously biased, but it is. Even for Gradle, it's a complicated domain that you
This.
might not care about, and your build is slow, your build is failing, and you're like, what is going on? There is like those huge logs with huge stack traces, and especially if you try to debug and you turn on debugging and you turn on tracing and you turn on telemetry to try to understand why it's slow, it's a nightmare.
It is.
And this is where the velocity and build scans in general come in to ease your pain a little bit. And I'm just going to show you and take you through it so you can see what am I talking about. So this is
Folks, while you share
here.
your screen, I share an article of Ars Technica that I think I liked pretty good. I know the link is like crazy, so just search on Google for XZ, just XZ. Actually, you're gonna find a story about this. It happened a couple of days ago, 2, 3, 4 days ago, maybe, not even. So yeah, and just before I forget, I'm sorry about that. Here's the link from the book that we were talking before, burnoutbook.net, for people watching live. Seems like a pretty good book that I'm going to add to my pile of like too many books to read. So on that note, sorry about that. Let's talk about the scams.
Yeah, just a life hack for people who are on the road a lot, like we are. Audiobooks solve the problem of the pile of books that I have to read, just because you do it on a plane, you do it on a train, you do it when working out in your hotel, you're doing it on your way to the conference, you're back from conference. It's Nothing improved my backlog of reading as switching to audiobooks.
The only thing with audiobook for me is that I like to highlight stuff in the books. But with that said, I highlight a lot of things in the books that I never go back to. So it's kind of like there's part of me that would like, no, I want to highlight shit because that's going to be useful for when I write blog posts, just for my own knowledge and stuff. But they always like stay in the book and like, or I
So
put them
there
in
are
Notion,
two.
but like I never reuse them. So audiobook, I guess it's fine now. So
I'll give you two solutions for that, and we will get to the demo eventually. Let's talk about the interesting stuff. There are two solutions for that. First, if you just want, if it's like for your own like emphasis, like, hey, that was an important part, I want to do something meaningful so it will remain on my brain longer, there are bookmarks that you can put in your audio. It's a button that you press in the interface, and then you can see them, go back to them, and listen again. I think it
oh yeah.
bookmarks like 30 seconds before you press the button, and then actually get the context. Now, the other cool thing is the Whisper Sync. Whisper Sync is a feature that exists in Amazon electronic like books, which is Kindle and Audible, in which when you buy both, you can actually see the bookmark that you put in Audible as a highlight in Kindle book.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know. That's pretty cool.
And it's cheaper to buy bundle than to buy two of them, like Kindle book separately and audio book separately. And then you have the win-win. You have the highlighting that you wanted, but also you enjoy the audiobook. And also after then, when you need to, like when you write a blog post and you want the exact quote, you can actually copy paste it from the Kindle book. Yep.
Oh, I like that. Like, thanks for sharing. I did not know about that. That's like they were. I know the content, like the where you finish listening would sync with the book, like where like the page would sync and stuff like that. I didn't know about like the highlight. Actually, I did not even know in Audible that you could highlight. I don't know what that's called, with like highlight audio
Bookmark.
part.
Yep.
So, oh, that's good. I will go back to audiobook then. Thanks for sharing.
Oh, my pleasure. So yeah, okay, Gradle, right? So what you look at is actually an instance of Gradle Develocity for the Spring framework that everybody know and use. So Gradle sponsors Gradle Enterprise, sponsors Develocity for a lot of open source projects, including Apache projects and Spring and many others. But Spring, I love to show Spring for one particular reason that I'm going to get in a second. So basically, when you look at a single build, this is what we call the build scan. And the beauty of build scan is that it's absolutely free for any user, being it on Maven, Gradle, obviously, Bazel, or SBT. With Gradle, you just run it with dash scan. With other tools, there is, if you go to scans.gradle.com, you will see here the instructions of what you need to do. Like for Gradle, is just like dash scan. If you are in Maven, it will be just, again, one line of code, applying the extension with init. And SBT is also like you add a plugin and you just run SBT package, right?
Okay.
And then you get this. Now, as I mentioned, comprehension. First of all, you will understand what your build is doing. You will see the goals that were executed. You can see them in the timeline. You can see the phases. You can see the times. You can see the tests, whether they failed, whether they passed. Okay, that was a bad example. Didn't have any test. Let's take the one, because it's parent. Let's take this one. Yeah, so here, any tests? No, I just picked the wrong ones. Let's take the one that takes longer, and then we'll know that there are tests there. And this is all very short. Here, 12 minutes. Here we go. This definitely has tests, because 12 minutes, it's all tests.
Yeah.
Yep, here we go. This is all the tests, right? So you can see the tests, you can see what passed, you can see what skipped, you can dig into that and see exactly the outputs and how long it took, obviously, right? And then you can, this didn't have, okay, we'll find another one that has tests and failed in a second. Extensions, plugins, custom values, all that allows you to understand your build. And this is critical to not only for your own, like doing your work better, but not less important is for preventing stuff like XZ, right? This is dependencies. You can see exactly the dependency tree, and you can see where they came from. You can see if the repositories were vetted, if the dependencies were approved, and everything else, right? So you can see what came from parent, and you can see there in their scope, you can see everything that was downloaded and why. Snapshot resolution, the exact, if you use latest in Fred for our cloud native and Docker analogy, if you use latest, you will see exactly what version was resolved and why. Right. So all this kind of stuff
Love
is
that.
very, very helpful for that. And this is all, as I mentioned, absolutely free and open for everybody as a build scan in order for you to comprehend your own project. Now, let's bring your colleagues to this comprehension. How do we do that? By sharing those results in context. So, for example, I wanted to see one that failed because of failed tests, right? So, outcome failed, and let's see the one that have tests. Let's try that. Yeah, here we go. Now we see tests that are failed. That's exactly what I wanted to see. And we can go here. And here we will see a failed test. Now, I want to tell you, hey, Fred, you did something that broke the build. Shame on you. But instead, I don't want to just, well, I want to just shame you, but, for the appearances, I want to give you something, a meaningful feedback. Exactly. So for that, I want to tell you exactly what failed and how can we fix it. I go to failures, I see a link here, and not only that, everything here will be linkable to the point of line of code that I think is the reason for the failure. Right? So this is now the
That's
link
great.
that I can send you and say, hey, buddy, this is where the problem is.
That is
So
great. I love that.
not only now I have the understanding of the project, I can share that with the relevant people so they will have the same understanding of the concept of the project, right? And it's the same with performance. For example, I found a slow task. I can go ahead and find a link for it and say, hey, look, there is a task which wasn't cacheable. Why? I want to fix it. I want it to be cacheable. I want it to be faster. Again, I can link it exactly to the tasks that were cacheable, and you say, you know what, we can cache the jar. So here's the link. Take a look at it and let's do it.
That is brilliant. Being able to deep link like everything is pretty good because I love the views you have. Like it's way easier to find the information, but at the end there's still like plenty of information. So being able to like pinpoint exactly what you want to show, when you want to share with people, it's great. I
Exactly.
like that. I
Right?
really like that.
Now, what Develocity adds to the build scan is even more contextual analysis. Now, not only I can see a single build, I can see multiple builds, and in the same of the same project or different project, and now I can compare between them. So if I look
That was
again at
my
this
next
longer
question.
build, that makes sense, and I can say I want to compare this build with a different build. So if it's not there, you know what, let's do something else. Let's dig into it and compare two runs of the same build. I want to compare this build scan with a previous build scan and see what was the difference, right? So here I can see before and after. This build and this build was 6 days earlier, and I want to compare them. Those are the differences between the two builds. Obviously, the time that they started, and there are differences in dependencies. Okay, some snapshots got updated. There are differences in custom values. CI build number
Yeah.
they've changed, and there are differences in infrastructure because it ran on a different machine. This will give me a good understanding, for example, why a certain build passed and the other build failed.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. That's pretty good. And to understand, as you said before, so like why the build now is taking so much more time, which can be like for good reasons. It just makes sense. It's because we had more dependencies or whatever, or like there is no good reasons, but you're going to be able to like see the difference between like those two build and see what
Exactly.
happens.
And
So,
understand why. Yeah. Yeah. But there is much more in Develocity than just the build scan. One of the most important reasons, and that will be the one more feature that I highlight, and then we'll stop with this blunt product pitch, is the predictive test selection. Now, predictive test selection is one of the features that I am ecstatic about. The way it works is, so how generally a build tool optimizes tests? Build tool decides for you what is not worth building by looking at two things: your project structure and the outcomes. From the project structure, the build might decide, hey, this is an implementation that depends on an API. When implementation changed, you don't have to test the tests which are related to API because the API didn't change. From the build artifacts, the build might decide that nothing new happened in this particular module, so we don't need to rebuild it, which is nice.
mhm.
But it has shortcomings. The shortcomings are, if you have a monolith that is not broken down to a proper API implementation, core, modules, etc., it won't work because every change will trigger changes in the rebuild of everything. Also, if you run clean build and you deliberately or accidentally deleted the artifacts in your local cache, the build will run again. Predictive test selection takes a different approach. Predictive test selection uses machine learning to understand which type of changes will trigger builds failures in what types of tests. It's basically, let's observe what's going on, let's observe the changes in the sources, and let's observe the results of the tests, and let's learn which changes trigger which test to fail. And then we can, if we have enough data to analyze, we will predict with high degree of confidence that a certain change in the source will trigger a failure in certain build. Once we have this model, we can say, you know what? Now, for the changes that won't trigger failures in those tests, we won't run those tests because we know that they will pass. So we'll just skip them and save time.
Okay.
Now let's see it in action. Spring Framework runs predictive text selection in simulation mode, in learning mode. And this is perfect for us to analyze whether it works or not. Because if it runs in real time, you don't really know what the model missed or what the model guessed correctly. But here we can say almost 98% was predicted correctly. This is insane level of accuracy, right? It only failed to predict 5 tests out of 381. This is very, very good. And it's actually not been the best week. So if I go maybe a week before, just like for the comparison, let's take another week. 98.6.
Mm-hmm.
It's consistently very, very good in predicting.
That is really good.
And then you say, okay, what's going to happen if I'm going to turn it on in usage? You will save 4 days and 11 hours out of a week. And if we take last 48 days, I'll crunch the data for a sec. The savings will be just tremendous. Yeah. Out of the last 28 days, the savings are 30 days.
Wow.
It's like an entire software engineer that can do something more meaningful than sitting and waiting on bills.
I really love that because and now we're not talking about like little application that doesn't take times to build. We're talking about things that, as you said, you need to wait for it to be built and like give you something that you can work with. And like if it's failing, you need to find the thing and you need to do it again. And so that is like really useful.
And
Like
the accuracy is 19.4%. That's insane.
I can deal with that. I can deal with like the
No,
1.6%.
right. So the question is, the question is what's going on with the 1.6? What was going on with those 14 incorrect guesses? And the answer is very simple. We're talking about local builds. We are talking about developers that are waiting on their machines and waiting for builds. You know when we don't wait? In CI. We don't wait for CI. So we don't care how long it takes. Well, unless it's like a month. But if it's like 5 minutes or if it's an hour, we don't care. What it means for that, it means we can run all the tests in CI. Regardless of what our model tells us, we can run all the tests, and then we can catch those 14 over a month, 14 incorrectly guessed tests that our predictive test selection assumed that will pass and didn't run them, but then eventually they failed, and we need to go and fix whatever failed. But this is so rarely happens that it's definitely worth the winnings that we are going to have in our local environment by skipping 48% of by saving 48% of the local build times.
I really love that. And is this part of like the is it like a paid product
Yeah,
or
this is the Develocity, which is the paid product for Gradle, and it's basically what where the money is, right?
yeah, makes
This
sense.
this brings so much savings that it's definitely worth what
Oh
it
yeah.
costs, and we can see by how the customers react and how they pay for it that it's definitely worth it.
Oh yeah, no. I was just curious. That was for my own knowledge and for people that was not even a criticism. I'm a big
Oh yeah,
fan
no,
of
no,
like
it's not,
yeah,
we all need to make our living. Someone has to pay
exactly.
for our salary. So no, definitely no complaints. It's
I
not.
like to have my
I'm not.
salary.
I'm not ashamed to talk about the fact that we charge for predictive text selection and other features of Develocity, because in the end of the day, the savings that you get,
Yeah.
as long as they are more significant for what you pay for, you got yourself a good deal. And this is something that we very proud about, that we give this good deal, and it works for everybody. This is the win-win of tech.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I never had an issue to pay for like a good piece of software that make me save money, save time, or do something that I don't want to do. I mean, like if it brings value on, like I need to pay. Like we need to pay people building those things. And as you said, I like to have my salary. I mean, I kind of need that to make a living and be able to just like do shit outside of work. So yeah, no. So that was amazing, great product, which I did not know about at all. Like I know Gradle, but I didn't know Develocity. And one last thing about DevRel, we were saying like, oh no, it's a big product pitch. And you know what? I think product pitches are great, and I highly encourage them on the show because I think what people doesn't like is shitty product pitch.
Yeah,
It's the shitty product pitches. Like a good product pitch, this is basically what we do all the time. Like we product pitch either our own technology or the technology, but like if it's well done, if it educates people, if it helps people being more successful, whatever, what's their definition of being more successful, I think it just makes sense. So
absolutely. I completely agree with you. And especially when it's done in a good When you don't try to kind of
Yeah, yeah.
push your product to someone who is not interested and just it's not their thing, then there is absolutely no problem. I completely agree with
Yep.
you, and I'm glad for this opportunity. When people expect it, it works great. So thank you very much for the opportunity for the shameless plug.
Thanks for being on the show. And folks that were watching us live or will watch the recording, this is the most longer period of time that Baruch, Baruch, Baruch
Yep.
and
Yeah. Here you
I
go. You got it.
agreed and her being nice to each other, because if you see us on Twitter, you may think that we're not friends sometimes, but we're just like two assholes pinging us each other on Twitter. We're just like the kind of we just like to pick on each other. So again, thanks everybody that were watching us live. Thanks if you're watching the recording. Thanks again for being on the show. That was amazing to finally, put a real face on the Twitter picture, avatar, or whatever you call that. Or I still don't call that X. It's still Twitter for me. And if
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. It was a pleasure to be. It was a pleasure to put a face to the picture. And thank you very much for having me, Fred. And I'm really looking forward to see you in person next time, whether Kung Fu or other conference
yeah,
or
I'm gonna talk to the
another
organizers.
opportunity. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. And see you. Actually, the next show is going to be on this Thursday. So that's going to be a shorter notice. Again, sorry about all the change in the schedule of the episode, but it was worth waiting. That was a great show. So thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of the day and see you